I do need to say hello to Gloria, my faithful left-handed woman. She's been gone for months at Kid's house. Welcome back, Gloria. Good to have your presence next to me. I feel the power. Well, you know, it seems pretty common sometimes in ordinary, regular old Christianity as you find it here in the United States today. You'll find most people will say, I wish you would come to my church, because in my church it's very exciting and it's a very happy time on Sundays. And if you become a Christian and begin to follow me as I follow Christ, you will be very happy, and your life will be happier. And you hear sermons about how to be happy. My understanding of the way of Jesus is different than that. In my understanding, as you follow Jesus, some days you will be happy and comfortable, and some days you will be unhappy and uncomfortable. Some days will be pain-free, and some days you will have a lot of pain. I can't really tell you that and be honest and say, well, if you come follow Jesus, you will be happy all the time. So, that sounds kind of depressing. And some people say, well, I come to church to be happy, and I want to leave on a happy note. Sorry. You can leave church today and you may not be unhappy, but it will at least be sobering and honest and true. If you like truth, you'll be happy when you leave today, I think. That sounds so presumptuous. Say, well, I'm speaking the truth. But I think I'm right. And you can please test it out and see if you find it to be accurate in your own life. But I made a long list of things. It took me all of about 3 minutes, because it wasn't very hard to do, of times in my life and in the people I know as they're following Jesus where things are not fun and not easy and not simple and kind of hard. So I broke out my list on you. At the first service, because I have a list, I can't remember the whole thing, I used the pulpit for the first time in like about 20 years. I've only been here 7 years, but it was like 20 years. And still, after the sermon, they said, oh, you're so far away, and I wish you would come down. Okay, so I came down from the mountain just to be with you all. You know, Jesus taught, among other things, he said, if you'll be my disciples, at least sometimes you will turn the other cheek. That famous line, turn the other cheek. If someone strikes you on one side, take a deep breath and don't strike back and offer the other one. I don't find that very fun. I never have. And when he said, forgive other people as God forgives you, sometimes people have hurt me, and I don't find it very easy or fun to forgive. Never have. The Bible says, if you're a Christian, you'll help bear other people's burdens. You share the load together. Some people's burdens are heavy. And while I understand love is its own reward, still, sometimes other people's burdens are heavy. And when we try to help, they feel heavy. They do. And that's not always fun. Jesus always says, whatever you do, love your neighbor as yourself. Some of my neighbors are not easy to love. They're not fun to love. I'm not fun to love sometimes. You'll have to work at it, and sometimes it will not be that much fun. I never leave church really happy when I have to come and admit I was wrong, or take a look at the dark side of myself, or in regular language to confess my sins. I never liked that very much. I appreciate the benefit. I never thought it was fun though. I never did. And then to be a Christian and living in the society around you that is really kind of crazy sometimes, and you can't participate like the other people do because you're on a Christian path, like you're not always a die-hard consumer, or you're not always a die-hard celebrity follower, and you're a religious person and we live in a pretty secular world. It's not always fun being different and not following everybody in the culture. I never found that a lot of fun. Sometimes when Jesus says, you really got to care for the poor no matter what you do. The poor have a hard time. And he has a bias and a prejudice, and he has a very sympathetic heart towards people who are struggling with financial resources and in their life financially, always on the edge of the economy. But sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes poor people are not that much fun to be with. There's other reasons why they're poor. Because they're really hard to be with. Some are great, some are not. Just like people in the pew here, some of us are easy to be with, others not. Right? Poor people, although it's very noble to say, well, I'm helping the poor, it's not always that much fun. Ask any social workers. Like, you know what? This is pretty much hard. But Jesus said, if you follow me, you will be helping the poor. I never found it that easy to try and seek out and pursue reconciliation or understanding of my enemies. Jesus said, no, you have to actually love your enemies and do good to those who persecute you. My enemies don't like me. I don't like them. They're hard on me. I can be hard on them. And that is not a lot of fun, is it? Jesus says, no, that's what you're going to do because you'll be following me. Sometimes it's not easy to give yourself away. Like in stewardship terms, we talk about giving and sharing of your time and your talent and your treasure to this community and to the world around you. Sometimes your time is limited, right? You don't have oodles of time left over. When you give up your time, you're giving out of what could go to something else. Your hobbies, your family, the things you're pursuing that are not a part of this church or another community. That's hard. It's hard to give your time. And we say give up your treasure. That's pretty hard too. We have a limited amount of finances. And Jesus says, well, you need to share those things. Like, sharing is hard. I don't always have fun doing that. It's hard sometimes to do things that are contradictory to your family, or do things that either your spouse or your friends or your neighbors you would agree on. Jesus has a long paragraph in the gospel reading today. It says, I haven't come to bring peace but a sword, and the one's foes will be members of your own household. Sometimes you'll disagree with your parents, and kids will disagree with other parts of their family, fathers and mothers and in-laws. I never found that kind of conflict very fun. I thought it was pretty challenging. I'll never forget, I came home from college, must have been on a holiday, and my dad was home and we were having breakfast, and my dad was a military person, at least retired military at the time. And I said, Dad, I've been reading the Bible, and I think I really, I don't know. I wonder if I should be a pacifist. Because Jesus, I don't know who Jesus would be shooting. Dad had a different point of view. And I didn't end up becoming a pacifist really, but it's always gnawed at the back of my mind. And to be able to have that kind of conversation with my dad, who not only was he a military person, but he had quite a few handguns in the dresser drawer. And I remember telling my dad, I said, well, maybe I should be violent against somebody else to protect someone else. But if it came down to me or the other person, maybe I should just not fight back. I was wrestling with stuff, and I was wrestling with my parents. And that wasn't much fun. You ever notice sometimes you would rather not come to church? I know, it's unbelievable. Sometimes you'd rather stay in bed, or you're just depressed and you want to kind of isolate and not be around people for a while. And yet part of the Christian tradition says, oh, come together, it'll strengthen you, even when you don't feel like it, and you don't want to waste your time, you think it's a waste of time, and you kind of want to be by yourself anyway. That's hard too. Sometimes it's hard to be together as a community. It's hard. Sometimes at a personal devotional level, I find it hard to go pray by myself. I like being silent, and I can find more things to do around my house when it's time to pray. I get a lot of work done when it's time to pray. When it's time to go sit and try to not be thinking and be present only to God, that's when I do the dishes and the laundry gets done and the dogs get groomed and I can work on that grout in the bathroom and start knitting those socks or whatever. A lot of things suddenly become very important when it's time. I find it hard to be quiet. I'm just telling you. I don't think it's always easy or very fun to practice a spiritual life. Sometimes I find it hard to hold my anger, hold my tongue. In the book of James it says, your tongue is like a rudder. Wherever your rudder steers, that's where you're going. And it's just wildly dangerous. It's like a fire. There's a good reason some of you guys don't see me on Facebook very often. That's where people never hold their tongue. But I find it just as hard as anybody else to hold my anger. You think I'm nice and calm and cool during sermons because you only see me in a collar and office time. And I can be a wicked son of a gun. I don't find it easy being a Christian. I don't always find it easy to control what the old people, the ancient people would call your passions, or your emotions, or your physical drives, whether it's eating too much or wanting too much stuff, or sexual impulses, controlling your sexual identity and keeping it in some kind of boundaries, responsibility and joy and health and balance. That's not easy, is it? It's going to be hard. To be patient under persecution. America has to be the easiest country in the world, pretty much. I know we make a lot of things up, but this can't be a very hard country to be a Christian in compared to the rest of the world, right? This is cakewalk. But then Jesus says, be patient when you're being persecuted. And I'm pretty sure he didn't mean when somebody looks funny at you when you pray at your meal. I think he meant, no, when they want to stone you, that's persecution. That's hard. I find it hard, and maybe you will too. I'm speaking on your behalf. I don't find much in my life, but it's hard when you're working in a work environment where you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to be honest, you're trying to be fair, and you're trying to play by the rules, and to be kind of a righteous person, and the people around you are trying not that hard. They're not so worried about fairness or goodness or rightness or equality, and you're in an environment where that's not encouraged. Or to get ahead, you got to do what you got to do. And it's really hard to make those decisions in the workplace when you're a business person or an employee. Well, my list ran out there around 20. And it didn't take me very long to figure those out. So, I find the Christian way of life to be very challenging, to include a lot of struggle, to not always be fun, to not always be happy, smiley, easy. It's funny, when people, I told you this last week, but I'll mention it real quickly now. Sometimes people come to the church for the first time, and they say, well, I saw your church on the website, and I wanted to see what it's like and check it out. Maybe I'm sure of church shopping, and I wonder how it'll be. So great, come on in, check it out. I never say this out loud, but I will just this one time. I want to say, sometimes coming to church is not about church, but it's about discipleship. And discipleship can be very hard. So come to church if you want to. Being a disciple might be difficult. Same thing with the whole baptism thing. When people come and they bring their child to be baptized, a young child. Let me get one thing out. I don't mind saying this 100 times in public. I don't think your child's going to hell. You don't come and get your kid baptized because you're afraid of hell. Please. What kind of a God sends babies to hell? I don't know. But if you want to sign your child up to begin to be a disciple, and you're going to introduce that child to the Christian way of life, okay, let's get her done. And that's going to be a tough time, but let's do that baptism. So, if you want to be a disciple, just know that it does include, along with the benefits package, it includes a lot of hard things as well. And everyone here, I'm pretty certain, is already a disciple. So, if you are following Jesus and you find your life can be hard because you're a Christian, if you find that your life is not that easy all the time, if you find it a difficult path, listen to the gospel reading today and know that Jesus would say, I told you so. Don't be surprised. It shouldn't come as a shock. It's like, you picked a hard gig. Remember the saying, I'm going to have to paraphrase it, but I think it's the one from the Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love? That's something like the path you're on. And if you were to go out and join some other organizations like the military, and they said, come on, join the military, you are going to love boot camp. I say, no, probably not, but it'll start you on the right path. Maybe that's something like when you signed up for discipleship. So I'll just conclude with this. You know that there will be pain and struggle and difficult times because you've chosen this path of life, that it won't always be happy and fun and comfortable and easy. You know that already. You're not surprised by it. This is what we signed up for. But Jesus promises this. I know if you follow my way of life, you will find your best life. You will be more alive following me than any other way. You will find your true self, and you will find the best way to live. And know that you are following in the steps of all the saints who have walked the same path, and all the apostles who, by the way, I'm pretty sure most of them got martyred. You're following in their footsteps. And you're following in the steps of Jesus, your master, who was killed. So Jesus says at the very beginning of the gospel reading, he says, don't think that you have to surpass the teacher. It's enough for you to be like the teacher. So you'll find your best self, your truest self, the best way of life. And no matter whether you are happy or sad, easy times or hard, smooth times or rough, Jesus does promise this. I will be with you always. I'll be with you always. Even to the end of the age, I'll be with you. Let's walk together.